All right, well, I would like to start by saying thanks to all of you for coming tonight and for showing an interest in the exhibition and what each of us have to say about our pieces. This idea came to me quite a few years ago. I have a solo exhibition that is a jazz portrait exhibition, and in an effort to sort of add some drama to my solo show, which is mostly flat, two-dimensional wall portrait art, I came up with an idea to do something sculptural that could be in the middle of the show. And I always wanted to tell the story of the Duke Ellington era of the Cotton Club, and I thought that maybe it might be interesting if it was done on a full-length Billie Holiday style gown. And then the pandemic hit. So it was like, this is the time. So I started working on the dress, and during the pandemic, as I would reach out to colleagues and over the phone and, on Facebook and such, I found other artists that were also making dresses, and their stories that they were telling with their dresses were just as heartfelt and poignant to them as mine was to me. And I just kept thinking, how cool would it be if we could just show all these dresses somewhere together, maybe once. So I talked to all of them, and everybody agreed. Some hadn't even made a dress. Some were sort of in the process of making a dress, and a couple had already completed their dresses. And we came together to make this exhibition. And I like to say when I describe this as that the story is the art and the dress is the canvas. And if you've walked around and read the artist statements, you will see that the art of this show is about the story that each of us are trying to tell. And for me, my story was about the beautiful but ugly side of the Cotton Club, the fact that Duke Ellington was only 27 years old when he was the band leader, the fact that the Cotton Club was run by a mobster from Sing Sing prison. There was a lot of exploitation. The people that did all the performances to bring the money into the club couldn't even walk through the front door of the club. They couldn't eat the food at the club, and they couldn't use the bathrooms at the club. It happened during Prohibition and race riots and the Art Deco movement, and I just wanted to encapsulate that the best way that I could in a dress. So that's the story behind my dress.
My dress actually started out as a quilt that I created in graduate school in 1998 in Philadelphia. And I had steeped myself in a large amount of feminist literature, as one does in graduate school, and was really thinking about the elevation of women's work and sort of that dichotomy between art and craft. As a DIY, very much self-taught, very untrained, and with very little skills. That's kind of how I approach my art making. I start out with small things, and then I attach them, and I make them bigger. I was thinking about the word mother and how it fit within the word smother, and that was sort of the conceptual idea for what was originally the quilt. And it's lined with red satin, so that thinking about the milk and the blood and feminine, and a lot of my work is about exploring the divine feminine and what that means, and how we relate to our objects in our everyday life. And with this particular piece, I scoured all of the thrift stores in a tri-county area of Philadelphia, and I bought all of the white bras, and so I took them apart, I stuffed them and sewed backs on them, and sewed them all together by hand. I had also made a postage stamp quilt that I sewed together by hand. So I'm a glutton for punishment, clearly. I would not recommend, fabricating things this way. But I did have that piece which traveled. It went to an exhibition in New Mexico at the time, and I actually sold it, and then it came back to me. So it's had a miraculous journey. As someone who always wants to kind of take small things and create them into something that's on a larger scale, and I was doing more installation work at the time, I just had an idea to sort of make it as more a statuesque kind of object. I'm sure I was probably influenced a little bit by Alexander McQueen, and always a little bit by the idea of fairy tales, like what happens if the prince doesn't show up. And so this is sort of like a Miss Havisham kind of piece, like the eternal sort of crone, or, you know, the bleaching, the white, the moths. It seems to be, it's something that has a life of its own, and it keeps on, as I add to it, having these other lives. And that's kind of also one of my MOs, is I make art out of the art that I make. So I may have something that I made 20 years ago, but I'm going to refashion it into something else, which I think is a very feminine art process. I think a lot of, and who knows, I'm shouldn't gender that at all, at least for my own experience. And then a lot of the supplementary materials were the large kind of manila pieces are they are patterns that I submitted drawings to the Singer Pattern Company in Michigan, and they thought I was insane. And this is before the internet, and I had to draw them out in the original scale. So the original drawings were that large, and I mailed them to Michigan, and they thought I was crazy. But those sort of were created at the same time as the quilt. And so, you know, that whole body of work and that whole time was really about like an excavation of the layers of femininity and, you know, the liminal space, like the fabric and the layers themselves, and also how we use fabric and clothing as armaments and as armor against the world. And it's also, there's also some whimsy in there as well, you know, thinking that she might have some barnacles or some tassels, or may have sprouted, I don't know what you would call a gathering of moths, infestation of moths. So it just continues to evolve, and but I really am so grateful to be included in this incredible and changing exhibition. It feels alive. It feels like the pieces are alive, and our responses to our materials and pieces are alive. So I'll just leave it there for now, but yeah, next.
Okay. My piece is Widow's Weeds, the witchy looking character at the end. And that's my quilt, and that's my little sculpture there. When Leanna asked me to be a part of this project, my husband had just been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and we knew it was incurable, and I knew there was a timeline for the amount of time that I had left to be a married person. So when I was thinking about making an object that embodied who I was at the time, my mind went to a widow's garment. Lately I've been regretting that because I have to keep talking about it, but as Marilee is saying, mine has evolved as this project has evolved, and the dress has grown into something that I'm proud of, but very different from where I was when I started making the initial piece. When I started looking up widow's garments, I of course came across Queen Victoria first and her black garb that she wore for 40 years. And I started thinking about how widows they're taken out of the context of normal life and put into this new place, and they're separated from the world in a much different way than a divorced person might be, because there's nobody to be mad at. You know, there's not a fight. There's not something that ended it that you can feel empowered about. Something's taken from you. So your identity changes, your body changes, your lifestyle changes. And so I wanted to make a garment that spoke to that. And I started riffing on the word weeds in Widow's Weeds. And obviously the Old English, the word weeds means garment. But I loved the idea that a weed is an unwanted plant. And so I started cutting up we used to have a king-size bed, and I got rid of it and got a smaller bed for myself after I became a widow. And I cut up the sheets from our bed, and I cut up some of his clothes, and I started dyeing them and eco-printing them with plants from the place that we live and red clay from the place that we lived. And I had the intention of making a quilted dress because my great-grandmother, when my great-grandfather died, made a quilt of his clothes. So that was where I started. But I really hated the little house on the prairie vibe that I was getting from the quilted dress. So I started seeking out black fabrics and started making my black dress. he was going through a lot of EKGs and having processes done, and so the torso of the dress made from his shirts and things that I dyed also have objects of his that I found in his bedside table drawer embedded in the little puffs of fabric on the chest of the dress, and there's a heart there because I got to witness his EKG, so I made a heart. So a lot of the pieces are extensions of what I learned about his anatomy while he was sick, but also about how it was changing mine. I was sitting a lot. I was gaining weight. My hair went white. I became an old woman while my husband was sick with cancer, and it surprised me to see myself in the mirror after he died and go, I'm not the same person I was, a year ago. And so the dress, I wanted it to feel the weight of that. And the year before my husband died, my father died, and 4 years before that, my grandfather died. COVID was taking people right and left, so there was all this stuff coming to my house from the dead. I would get objects from all the people in my family that were dying, and there's a weight to that. And so I wanted my dress not to feel pretty. I wanted it to feel heavy and a little ugly like I was feeling right then. So I made her a bustle, and I made, the heavy garment, and I made her thick, and I felt it felt strong after a while. I started feeling like, oh wait, I have to be a strong person to carry this weight. And so I became empowered by the process. She wasn't a frail little character, this widow. She was sort of becoming this, empowered woodland crone. I kind of liked her all of a sudden. There was a strength that I didn't realize I had. And so it was coming out in the dress. But the dress didn't have a face. The person didn't have a face or hands, and I needed my woman, to have autonomy, to have a personality. So I made her. When we all started making headpieces to go with our dresses, I needed my woman to have a face and the crone's hands, and they're also made from the fabric. And my husband was born in the year of the rabbit, so she's clutching a little rabbit, but that's also a symbol for rebirth for me, so the rabbit appears in my work. And the sculpture is, they're keening women in Celtic traditions. Women used to keen or wail at funerals to help the survivors express their grief. And the Catholic Church suppressed that. They didn't like the women having that voice. The priests were supposed to speak at the funerals, not the women. But the women used to bang on the coffins and scream and wail. And I loved that the voice of the grievers were brought out by the old women that came to these ceremonies. So it's about empowerment after a really horrible thing that happens in your life, and I think there is some beauty in it, even though you have to look past the scary stuff to see it. So that's my dress.
Can we clap for you?
Yes.
Mine is the canvas dress. Is it a dress? Is it a bell tent? Is it a fort? It's kind of all of those things. When COVID hit, everybody became the introvert, but I was already an introvert, and I just became even more introverted and hermited at home, and I kind of retreat to my garden a lot, and other gardens, and in the woods, and we were kind of scared to go hiking in the woods, breathe in what, everybody's breathing hard in the woods. And anyway, just that first few months of COVID, we were kind of nervous, and I just stayed at home, and I spent a lot of time with my family. My dad died, and so I was kind of grieving and just kind of sad, and I like walking around and seeing all the nature stories, all the little vignettes in the woods and in my garden. And so I put those to cloth with machine. I'm not a very good hand sewer. I use big hand stitches, but not the small stuff, my arthritic hands. So lots of machine sewing of scraps that I'm also a fabric hoarder. So I have bins and bins of fabric that I just get out and sew together. And my dad, he had Parkinson's, so he was bedridden for 5 years, and he still had his weights in the room. He kept saying, "Oh, don't throw those away. I'm going to use them one day." And I was like, he couldn't use those. He was sick. And so I took them home when he died, and he always said I had built-in geometry. When he would come home from work, he would draw me a shape and say, here, make the 3D model out of that. And so I would. So then I took his weights and I covered them with batting and these geometric shapes and weighted the dress with the soft sculptures. Lots of weaving of spider webs and strings and stitches and sutures to tie all the interconnections of nature back together. I get a lot of joy from going to nature, but then I get really depressed when I find something in the city. I find this beautiful meadow with lots of butterflies and bugs, and then the next day I go and it's been sprayed or mowed. So I'm like stitching everything back together. I come home and just sew a little bug on my machine and put it together with a flower, and I think that's all. And some basket weaving thrown in there.
My dress is our mossy friend over here. I don't know. I think it's really interesting that a lot of us started working on this during COVID. It's also a very much an honor to be part of the show because she was really never meant to see the light of day. I started working on it while we were in quarantine and the world seemed like it was ending. So all I could think about was man-made structures being reclaimed by nature, and that's what I ended up creating a lot of my pieces during that time about. And this dress form has served me so well over the years. I've made a couple of different dresses using it, but it's from the 1930s. It's breaking down, so I wanted, I don't know, to give it a new life, I guess. And I spent a lot of time out in the woods as well during COVID. I have always been very inspired by and drawn to the woods and the outdoors. And I was living in Boston at the time, and so I didn't really have much access, but there was a super overgrown area behind our apartment that I don't think a whole lot of people knew even existed. And I would go out there, especially after heavy storms, and find these beautiful twisted sticks and just all of these beautiful things, and I would bring them home and glue them. And since I've been here, I've been doing a lot more foraging and harvesting and finding just all these tiny little micro worlds out there. And I don't know, I've always been attracted by small worlds. And yeah, I ended up learning a lot about decay as well, and I have become very enraptured by mushrooms and mycelium and their place in the life cycle, which is both the beginning and the end, which I think is really beautiful because mycelium recycles organic materials so it can become life again, and I think that's so fascinating and beautiful, especially because the fear of mushrooms is sort of written in our DNA as humans. And I just think that's really, really beautiful and interesting. So yeah, I think that's it.
Mine is the blue cyanotype flapper's dress. I think it's very interesting just listening to everybody talk about how COVID changed our thinking, possibly, and the way we think about things and time. I know I started thinking about time in a different way. And my dress, I had taught cyanotype to children, never thought much about it, but I took a deep dive into it during COVID because I had the time. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the fact there's so much failure and chaos, which I tried to really start incorporating into my work. This dress is based on just thinking about time, DNA and fancy word I can never pronounce. Epigenetics, thank you, which is really cool. And so the dress is made out of collage negatives, and I put the cyanotype chemical on the fabric, and then I expose it to sun. So you get a lot of failure factors there, like the dog gets on it, you thought you had 10 minutes of sun, no sun. You just have to embrace it and go, well, let's just see where this goes. So this dress, and also tied it kind of back into, both my grandmothers were flappers and wore dresses like this, are very similar. And so that kind of inspired me too. So like the robe that kind of goes over it is the DNA helix, and then underneath it are all the photographs of my family with an overprint of peas, because that's genetic. And I had a lot of fun just kind of playing with the imagery. And the beadwork represents, obviously blood and how DNA and stuff like that. I guess that's really it. I think I have fallen in love with Cyanotype. Because I'm trying to work in, this could be a total flop and be happy with it. And like everybody says, recycle. So the wall piece is all my prints from my first year printmaking. I ran out of paper, and if you tried to order paper during COVID, you might know what that was like. They say, oh, it's great, and then send you an email saying, we might get this in 6 months. So I got all my old prints out, pulled them out, the ones I didn't like, and just started coating them with Cyanotype. And then, not being happy with them, I decided to cut them up and do something a little different with a Cyanotype. Typically, they're usually beautiful on paper and framed. And I was like, well, I'm a little tired of that. I want to try something different, because I'd tried that. And so that came from that. Basically, it got recycled, and I really kind of like this. I got to see where it goes next.
My piece is this green and white dress here in the middle. And I developed this, at the beginning of COVID. I found a box of my old ice skating medals from when I was a kid. And I knew that I wanted to create something that spoke to what we were going through at that time. Of everyone kind of went through this collective trauma, and how do we move forward from that? For me, I really leaned on the lessons that I learned as a child to get through some of the harder times. I lost several people, and I was diagnosed with a congenital birth defect right around the time that I joined this project. And this dress was really a dress of healing. I was told that, I have this neurological issue, and so I did a lot of digging into my own DNA and genetics to see where this comes from, and what did my ancestors do to deal with these issues. A lot of the work that went into it honors that. The snowflakes that I created for the bodice are done using a technique from Irish crochet, where you make lots of small motifs, and then you take those motifs and you put them together to create an object. You see beautiful, beautiful Irish crochet tablecloths, and occasionally dresses and garments like that. And I really wanted to explore that idea. Each layer of the dress represents, different challenges that women across history have overcome, and how they've dealt with those, and the stories that they've created to deal with those. The headpiece that I created, I loved connecting with the Valkyrie stories. These were women who were not supernatural. They were not, goddesses. They were just women who helped out in times of need. And I really, really wanted to embody that in myself. And I wanted to make sure that this art piece as a whole embodied that spirit of you pick up and you do what you need to do, and you improve the lives of the people around you in that way. And then my art piece on the wall here is a play on those Irish crochet motifs and how I could scale them up or change them or make the forms something other than, doilies. I think that the 3D shapes are really beautiful and fun to play with. And after you process them so much, they kind of lose that, oh, this is a pretty fiber textile. This is something more. And that's me.
My background's in film. I like a lot of manual photo work and paper making. And I've taught paper to kids for about 20 years. So after a personal experience, a life-changing experience, I made this bundle here on the wall. It was a paper dress made out of handmade paper, but I approached it in a really what felt like a childlike way. I felt photo was very, it's experimental too, but I was struggling with the technicalities of photo, and especially trying to show work and worrying about prints and technicalities, that I realized paper for me was a very enjoyable, freeing process because I was usually with kids when I was doing it, I think. And so I made this fabric out of paper that contained a lot of shopping receipts that I had hoarded. And this was probably in 2018. And I don't know, it was a cathartic thing. I didn't really like the dress after I made it, but I was proud that I put it together. I mean, I literally just put it around my body and thought about kids, and you're with them for a week and they just create something out of pure pleasure. And so I just had scissors and I stitched a little, and my mom sews a lot, and I think there was something there that I didn't want to be confined to anything rigid, measuring, nothing. I just wanted the experience of enjoyment. And so I eco-dyed it with a friend. It fell apart. It was beautiful, and I thought, with this project, and I'm so grateful to be here too, thank you. It's really been such a journey to revisit this dress. So initially I thought I would show this paper dress and put it back together again, mend it, and create something new, it's not a new idea, but it felt right at the time, but I just couldn't really get there. And someone that I respect highly said, I think it's time for you to move on from this dress. And so I don't sew. And I was remembering playing as a kid in my backyard. I think, probably anywhere from 4 to 7 years old with my friends, digging a hole in the dirt. I mean, that was what we did. We were digging with those little weeble wobbles, and we had a little, like a little farmhouse, and it was just about playing in the dirt under the big oak tree. And again, it was that childlike, I'm going to be in this dress show, and how do I want to? So, this was 2020 or so? I'd already been playing with fabric and old sheets. And I feel I should interject here that being very shy and very uncomfortable right now, I'm making myself do this. I have a lot I want to say, but I'm really subtle about it. And I think that's what I'm putting into a lot of the fabric. It's a way to think about things, ponder, a lot of personal things going on. And I was recently asked, or a group of people sitting around a table, a group of artists, if you had to ask a question of your art, if that's how you describe your art as a question. And I've been thinking about that. And I came to, how do you want to be remembered? So I think I'm still figuring out what all this is about, but I think it's, these were cranes that I did after the dress. These are all personal letters, and I folded them all into origami cranes. And then for this show, I undid them. And there's something about the process of undoing something. It can be a really different experience. And what am I trying to communicate to my own kids about some of these personal things? So there's a lot in this. But it's really, I think about how am I talking to my kids? How do I want to be remembered? And I think that informs every second of every day. If I absorb that thought, what am I doing in every moment, and how am I making lives better, especially my kids? So I don't know if you've read the statement. There's a Jedi Knight reference, and that's my son. So we're gonna watch all of Star Wars from release, hundreds of hours of Star Wars. We had a date last night, actually. So we watched A New Hope and part of The Empire Strikes Back. I was falling asleep. So he's going to, on this piece, he's going to draw, it's going to be a Star Wars diagram, and we're going to go down the Jedi rabbit hole. And so it's really about ethics and, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? And are you treating people well? And those decisions aren't always easy. So Princess Mononoke is my daughter. I don't know if anybody is familiar with this animation. Miyazaki did it. A lot of people know Totoro. But it's not so easy to think about progress. It's not so easy to think about just evil versus good. That's not always clear. And I think a lot about nuanced decisions that we have to make. And there's the nature element always. How are we existing in this world? And then the Kuna, there's some, if anyone's familiar with Panama, and the Kuna Women Ensembles, I was there in the 90s and was heavily influenced by these people living on these beautiful islands, stitching, and I mean, from the outside, it was this perfect life. Really nobody's perfect, right? But it's really informed a lot of how I approach daily living. And I've recently learned that you can now access San Blas, I think, by a highway. We had to get there by a little plane. It was so isolated. It was just, I don't know, a very remote, beautiful existence that I witnessed. Archaeology is a huge part of it. Humans, history, trash. What is trash today versus trash? There's a British anthropologist that my dad told me a lot about, Mary Douglas, and I'm very influenced by her and her thinking about how we all, think of trash and what are we leaving behind, all that stuff. But there's a lot in here, and I'm still figuring it out. I think the headpiece is what would a kid do? Like I have to make a headpiece. I don't know. I like this bucket. Like if I had to put on a show, and be like, this is a Star Wars thing too. Is how I love the costume design in Star Wars. And so I was thinking about, I don't know, it just seemed like something you might see in Star Wars somewhere. I don't know. It's just, I guess it's whimsical and fun, and if I had to put on some production, that would make a great headpiece, I think. And then there's, it's just total play and experimentation and, thinking about daily living and the big picture, all of it. So thank you guys so much for coming. Yeah, it's great to be here.